Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast. With your hosts, Ashley and Michael, please sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Undroppables Playbook, a football podcast presented by the Undroppables and sponsored by Analyst Depot. I'm your host, Ashley. This is my lovely co-host, Michael Duncan. How are you in these first 2 days of free agency?
I feel like I look a lot more disheveled than I am, but I was just looking at myself, and I just feel like I look disheveled. I don't feel disheveled. I started the day off because not being able to leave my home because there was a SWAT standoff like 2 streets down from me. So that was fun. It was a very interesting start to my day.
Got a couple extra hours with the dog.
Exactly. So I'm having a good day. Then Darius Slay and the Eagles tried to ruin it, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes, we can. It's been a hectic 2 days, as it always is in the first few days of free agency. You always forget how crazy it is. For those of us who obviously don't work in sports full time, when you're working and your phone is constantly going off because you have, Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero notifications on, and it's constant buzzing because it's always something in free agency every minute of the day. So it has been truly interesting, and a lot of big names, a lot of trades that we didn't expect to be seen. But why don't we start with the news? How we're going to run down today a little bit is we're going to break down key trades, and then we're going to go into free agency, looking at people who re-signed, left, or were picked up. But we're going to talk about some news first, things that are not official but have been happening around the NFL. So we can start with the number 1 overall pick. The Bears officially decided to get rid of that, and the Panthers have jumped up to the number 1 spot. Can you remind me what they got in return for that?
Yes, I can. And that's the one trade I don't have the details in front
of me. I believe it's 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and DJ Moore. I think that's the culmination of it. But a pretty big one that happened on Friday.
Yeah, so picks number 9 and 61 in this year's draft, the first round pick in 2024, and a second round pick in 2025, as well as DJ Moore.
Yep, so DJ Moore is now the wide receiver 1 for the Bears. The Panthers have had some pretty odd statements regarding their trade up to the number 1 overall pick. It truly feels like the movie Draft Day, in which I love Draft Day. Where they traded up, and now they're talking about, maybe we'll try and recoup some of that and move down a little bit, because they claim they have their eyes on several guys in those top spots. We know in the top 4, 3 teams are QB needy, one of them being the Panthers. But they claim they have their eyes on several guys. And I do just want to remind you, so a lot of what goes on pre-draft is mind games. So we never really know what anyone's thinking. But the Panthers made a big jump to try and secure their quarterback of the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of scary whenever you're, getting rid of your future assets for
buyer's remorse.
Yeah, whenever you're doing it for a young, unproven player, it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
What scares me even more is just the fact that outside of DJ Moore, they barely had any weapons to begin with, and now whatever rookie comes in isn't going to have anyone to throw to, and the people that they are going to have to throw to are not going to be very good, and you're not going to have a lot of assets to be able to recoup that. So that's a little scary. Because we've seen, more and more, I feel like NFL teams are becoming very aware of the impact that putting a good surrounding cast of pass catchers around a young quarterback can really give you more details, i.e. Jalen Hurts this year or Justin Fields next year, we hope. So yeah, that's intriguing. But at the end of the day, Frank Reich said, I've had enough of this bullshit with everything he did in Indianapolis with a new quarterback every year, and said, I'm just going to go get my guy. So more power to him.
Yep. And you and I were just talking about how the free agency market for wide receivers this year was pretty dull. A couple of big names there, most of which are picked up, we'll talk about later. So it's going to have to be these unproven younger guys, or guys who have been in the NFL, who are looking to make that jump into like a true wide receiver 1 role. It is interesting for the Panthers to see how they're trying to play this out. But that was what started off our weekend. And then We can talk about Jason Kelsey will be returning to the Philadelphia Eagles. Says he spent some time talking with family, with teammates, with colleagues, everybody. Decided that his time's not up yet, and he is destined to come back to the NFL, which means another great season of the New Heights podcast to come.
Yep. 1 year, $14.25 million. He remains the highest paid center in the NFL, as he should.
Yes, I agree. Austin Eckler is seeking a trade. It seems contracts talks with the Chargers have kind of stalled out a little bit, and he requested permission to seek a trade, which kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Do you agree?
I mean, those things always come out of nowhere, I feel like, but I wasn't exactly shocked, especially once I saw that next year he's set, this upcoming season is the last year of his deal. And he's only set to make $6.25 million. I'm not an advocate of paying running backs, but like if you're Austin Eckler, be an advocate of yourself because you're worth more than that when you're looking at what other people around the league are getting and what you bring to the table. Not to mention, unlike a lot of running backs that have gotten that contract, like he never got a big contract. He was an undrafted free agent, and then he went into that deal, and he's played on that deal this entire time, even being one of the most heavily used running backs in the league and being one of the most productive. So he's been a very good soldier up until now. But like at the end of the day, I don't really know what's going to come of it because most trades in this situation need to come with another contract as well, which means you have to give up draft picks as well as pay a running back a large amount of money. And unless you're the San Francisco 49ers, most teams won't do that.
Agreed. But I will note it's coming off of the best season he's had. One of the better performances of the entire year last year was Austin Eckler. So he has a lot to bring to the table. It's just a matter of who will be willing to pay for it. The Colts have decided to move on from Matty Ice. Matt Ryan was released today. I don't have the exact number they save. I believe like $17 million in cap space or something, but they've decided that experiment is over and the Colts feel like a carousel of doom.
So the dead cap, they save about like $6 million, I think. The dead cap hit is pretty decent. It's a decent chunk of like 18
numbers.
18
so I had those numbers backwards. So the dead cap is 17 and they only saved a handful of million.
Yeah. So
very interesting. What do you think of that one?
Not shocking. I don't know what they're planning on doing, but whatever. They're basically starting from scratch at this point. So
it's the Colts.
Yep.
Another key name being released, Ezekiel Elliott, is being released from the Cowboys after seeing that Tony Pollard was placed on the free agency tag this year. Something I don't think either of us kind of not surprised, but didn't expect, considering Jerry Jones's love for Ezekiel Elliott and the amount of money they've shelled out for him. The Cowboys expect it to be like post June 1st cut so they can save money.
Yeah, I mean, good for you, Jerry. I kind of wish you didn't do this because it's more fun when you are dumb.
Yeah.
But
I just picture him listening to like heartbreak songs in his office with his McMuffin this morning.
Like the posts they made about him, like I get it, like he's a franchise player and all that, but God, it's just like it reads truly more like a love letter.
Yes.
Like I just like, what has he done? Like, I don't get it. Like, you can like him, but like, what did he do there? That was so good. He was a great player for like 3 years.
Yeah.
It's not like they won anything. It just cost you a crap ton of money. I don't know.
Yeah.
He didn't even win Rookie of the Year. He should have. He didn't. I don't know. I don't get it. I hate Zeke. I don't like him.
It's very interesting. Again, neither of us were kind of surprised by it. It's a smart move, which is why we're surprised because we didn't expect Jerry Jones to do it. Big talk around the town today is Aaron Rodgers, who says he had gone into his darkness retreat. About 90% he was going to retire, 10% he was going to play. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you heard on the Pat McAfee show? You listened. I did not. I only got the highlights.
So he went in to the darkness retreat, most likely to retire. He comes out, 3 days later. And apparently when he went in, the Packers told him, take your time. We're in no rush. So he said, all right. He comes out, gets a bunch of notifications to a bunch of people saying that the Packers have basically said that we want to move with Jordan Love and we're over you, more or less. And Aaron Rodgers was like, that's a change of pace from what I remember, having now decided that he's most likely willing to play again. So he comes back, he talks to the Packers, and they say, okay, like, yeah, we want to trade you. We want to go with Jordan Love. And he's like, okay. So they let the Jets talk to him, and basically it's been a done deal with the Jets since like last Friday, since it started being reported. The only thing that's holding it up is not Aaron Rodgers. It's the compensation that Green Bay is getting back. They are still negotiating that part. Aaron Rodgers stated that very clearly on Pat McAfee's show. I have no clue whose leverage he screwed over by doing that. I've seen people argue vehemently in both directions.
Yeah.
I have no idea at this point. This is just a very odd conversation that is very out there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a situation that I can't remember really being able to witness in such a confusing and public manner. So, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So it seems like Aaron Rodgers is going to be a New York Jet. He denies claims that with the Jets' recent signings of Alan Lazard and targeting of Randall Cobb, that those were requests he made. I did see that he says it's utterly ridiculous that he had like a list of demands that the Jets had to meet in order to get him. I don't know. It seems, in my opinion, it seems like the Packers probably holding out a little bit. I don't know, but either way, it seems like we're going to get Aaron Rodgers for another year. That darkness retreat must have really worked. It should go in somewhere expecting 90% to be retired and then come out and want to play.
You said he was pretty sick of it, so
now I'm intrigued.
It was a little too long. He would have preferred it was only like a day or two as opposed to 3. Was what he said. So
interesting. But now I'm intrigued by the darkness retreat. It really changed his mind. That's wild. Either way.
Still don't think I'll be doing one anytime soon, but good for him.
KJ Osborne has saved a man from death in a car accident. His car was burst into flames. The guy literally said he was going to die if they weren't there.
Oh yeah,
I say that. His car burst into flames, and KJ Osborne helped him out of the vehicle and saved the man's life along with somebody else. But ended up saving the man's life, and he posted about it today.
That dude was he's a reality TV star for The Challenge. I don't know what that is. I think my sister has been obsessed with it for weeks, and she's been watching it a ton. So I'll have to.
Is that also why he said thank you for filming it? Because I'm pretty sure the guy said like thank you guys for filming it, like his rescue, and that to me was odd, because that doesn't feel like something you usually thank somebody for. It's like videotaping saving you from a burning vehicle.
Yeah, I got nothing.
So maybe that's why he's happy they videotaped it for the reality TV show. That would make sense.
I don't know if it would make sense.
I guess.
It would make more sense than him not being a reality TV star, I guess.
True. All right. Why don't we move on? Key releases. Let's talk about what ruined your day a little bit today. Darius Slay. The Eagles maybe releasing Darius Slay. Probably releasing Darius Slay. Go slow down.
Well, so it was reported. I forget if we talked about it last time. I forget what the timeline has been completely. But all of a sudden, it was the Eagles have allowed Darius Slay to search for a new deal.
Yep.
What really happened behind the scenes was his agent thought that he deserved more money, whether that be more guarantees, whatever. The Eagles were like, nah. And the agent was like, okay, let me talk to other teams and see if they'd be willing to give us more. And the Eagles were like, okay, sure. They did that, and I don't know. Apparently, it came back with like no one traded for him, so I don't really know how those conversations went. But then all of a sudden, I was 100% positive that this was nothing, and Darius Slay would be an Eagle next year.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, this morning / early afternoon, it was announced that the Eagles plan to release Darius Slay, but they have not done that yet.
Players were outraged, like all over Twitter with memes and GIFs. The current Eagles players were kind of very mad about that.
I wouldn't say outraged.
Okay, mad.
I wouldn't even say mad. I would say more so surprised and upset.
Okay.
More like I think that they understand it. No, well, no, it's different. Like, I don't think they're like storming the NovaCare complex and being like, "How dare you?" with pitchforks. Like, they're just like, "Dang, that sucks."
Yeah,
we like him, but he hasn't been released yet. AJ Brown has taken to Twitter to yesterday talking about fruits, and today after the Darius Slay news, he said, "I guess we're going to have to talk about proteins." He's having a ball on Twitter.
Wide receiver tweets.
Yep. He's not a fan of watermelon, which I find ridiculous. Watermelon is
he incredible. A fan
of? Grapes, grapefruit, I believe. There was like one or two others that mangoes. I think he likes mangoes. It's beside the point.
Or citrusy.
I like yeah, but there weren't. I don't know.
He likes things with more flavors, though. Besides the grapes, the other one have a lot of flavor.
I think grapes have flavor. Maybe it wasn't grapes. Maybe it was apples. I know it was apples. I forget if it was also grapes. Anyway, yeah. So then Darius Slay, after not being officially released at 4:00, also hinted that, hey, maybe I'll come back. And then his wife was like tweeting eye emojis.
I love his wife.
She's incredible, and like she had incredible things to say about Philadelphia. She said this was her first year ever tailgating, and like she really engulfed herself in Philadelphia this year, especially.
She was the one who made all like the cupcakes and things. Yeah.
Yeah. She did a lot with a lot of
bread,
fans.
right?
Yeah. She was giving out tickets to most games. She was giving out Slay jerseys all the time. Just a really awesome person. So I don't really know what to think. There's a really small part of me that just hopes they figure this out and that all of that happened for nothing, because even though he will be considered a post June 1 cut, that doesn't stop him from being able to sign with other teams now, meaning that he should still be officially released, because Zeke is also a post June 1 cut.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's happening. I really have no clue. The official transaction has not happened yet, so Darius Slay cannot actually sign with another team. He's still a Philadelphia Eagle as of the recording of this podcast. So yeah, very confusing. And
it is interesting. It is interesting.
Yeah.
Very. Anyway, the other one's Calais Campbell.
Yes. Yeah. He's 36 years old. But he's been pretty good for a pretty long period of time. For the most part, he spent the last 3 seasons with Baltimore. Signed a 2-year contract last offseason. Yeah, so this is the second year of that. He got released, and yeah. I mean,
that's what it is.
Yeah, he'll get paid by someone. Yes. Probably not a ton of money. He's 36 years old, but he's still a very useful football player and a very good football player. So
I agree. Let's talk about some of the trades that have gone down. Stephon Gilmore was traded to the Cowboys for a 5th-round pick from the Colts. Pretty low compensation. I'd say a little fair, but lower than people were expecting.
Yeah. This one confuses me. Not from the point of like, I see why Dallas did it. Absolutely. It makes sense. What I don't fully understand is, like, he was pretty good last season. Like he was solid from like his PFF stats and all that. He got fairly good grades. People were making a really big deal out of this as if they were trading for Stephon Gilmore, Defensive Player of the Year Stephon Gilmore. But like, this is 32-year-old Stephon Gilmore, not the one that was drafted 10th overall. Everyone needs to calm the F down, in my opinion. There's some part of me that's saying that because it's Dallas, but like, I personally, like, I don't get the hype. There was a lot of hype. They're calling this a huge splash trade and like bringing another star to the secondary. It's like, he's going to be really good as a second cornerback, but you're not trading for the Defensive Player of the Year. So I don't know. The 5th was fair compensation. It was a good trade for the Cowboys. I just don't think it was like this massive.
Yeah, they were making it seem like it was like huge.
Yeah.
Which it's a big name, but it's also was a much bigger name in previous years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, speaking of former Patriots and everything, we did forget to mention in the news that Devin McCourty did retire.
Yes, he did.
He did. Patriots sent out a very nice little video and stuff for him. More trades. I want to skip that one for a second. Jalen Ramsey traded to the Dolphins for a 3rd-round pick and tight end Hunter Long.
And he also
love when players are involved in trades. Like, players.
I agree. Yeah, it's more fantasy.
Yeah,
but just fun. Kind of like the Russell Wilson one last year. I feel like 4 different players were involved in that. It got more guarantees tacked on to the end of Jalen Ramsey's deal. I believe like the last 2 years of his contract are now fully guaranteed. Really great for Ramsey. We're seeing the Rams being torn apart. There's rumors that Matt Stafford is on the trade block. So, the Dolphins are going all in, and I feel like they have a billion cornerbacks, so they're paying $1 billion. But apparently Byron Jones is one of them, and like he's like retired, I guess maybe. And I've lost track apparently of the Dolphins secondary, but whatever. I mean, good for Jalen Ramsey if he had a bit of a down year last year, obviously. If he can get back to kind of what he was, then that's going to be huge for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and I just think the Rams in general had a really down year last year, and there was no chemistry, no effort really anywhere. I do think it says a lot about the Dolphins, though. The Dolphins are making what seems like a really big push to try and make a run this year. Intriguing and interesting to see how that'll all work out with them reassuring that Tua is their quarterback of the future, picking up his 5th-year option. So they're clearly trying to make a big push this year, and I'm curious to see if they actually do go all in.
I mean, I think they are going all in.
I think so too. I think there's a couple more things they will do that will solidify that thought for me, but either way. Bucks trade Shaq Mason and a 7th round pick to the Texans, and in return get a 6th round pick. Thoughts? Anything?
The Bucks are going to be bad.
Yeah.
It's basically all I got. Shaq Mason was traded last offseason. Now he's traded again. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's good for the Texans. You know, if you have a young quarterback, it's probably good that he doesn't die behind the worst offensive line in the NFL. So
yeah, I like that. That's a good way to look at it. Jonnu Smith traded to the Falcons for a 7th round pick from the Patriots, who had Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Who they had both of them, and everyone was thrilled, including me, that the Patriots were going to start running 2 tight end sets again, and Jonnu Smith was like never ever.
You're all idiots. You're all idiots.
I was just excited and had hope.
You're all idiots. I'm speaking to anyone that thought Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry were going to be the next coming of the Patriots 2 tight end offense, because I'm still angry that I have spent every offseason since then. I'm purposely speaking directly into the microphone. I have spent every offseason since then arguing that Jonnu Smith will not be relevant. And guess what? He has not been. He was just traded for a 7th round pick. And now, guess what? The first thing I saw, oh, this is horrible for Kyle Pitts. You're all idiots. You are morons. I refuse to talk any more about that trade.
Okay. All I was going to say is that was my hope originally. And then I saw Jonnu Smith play 2 games.
It was never going to happen.
It was the nostalgia. Anyway.
The nostalgia of what? The greatest tight end of all time and a murderer? Which one was which in that?
Had to go there. It's okay.
Which one was which? Who was Rob?
I don't know. Either way.
Neither of them were as good as Aaron Hernandez.
No, I'm not saying they were. I had hopes that they were going to have an interesting 2 tight end set. Either way,
interesting.
It's over.
It was interesting that they signed both of them for a ton of money right away.
It was really interesting. It was so much money.
That was the last time it was interesting. I'm sorry. I'm still angry about this. I was angry about it when it happened. I've been angry about it every time it's talked about.
Okay, we can transition to another tight end then. Nice. The one I saved for last. The New York Giants acquired Darren Waller in a trade for a 3rd round pick, which is the 100th overall pick. Essentially, it was the pick that they got for trading Kadarius Toney away. So traded Kadarius Toney for Darren Waller.
Yeah.
Your thoughts first or my thoughts first?
No, you can go. I don't have a ton of thoughts.
I really like it. I think Daniel Bellinger was good last year, but having, again, a veteran, someone who is a very clear-cut pass catcher who has shown his worth, to get him for just the 100th overall pick, even with injury concerns in the past 2 years, I believe it is, that he's missed a couple of games, I'm happy to spend the 100th overall pick on that. with his upside. And you and I were talking before that he has no guaranteed money left on that contract, so there's really no downside to this for the Giants. And after paying Daniel Jones a lot of money, putting key people beside him that he'll be able to throw to was a goal of mine, and I'm sure the Giants as a whole in free agency. And I think this was a good way to do it with a lot of upside and not a crazy amount of downside.
Yeah, I mean, the downside is that he's injured and he gives you nothing. And at that point, it is what it is. I think that it was a smart move from the point of view of, I don't know if you were really going to get pass catcher help from the wide receiver position in free agency or the draft that would be as immediate of a help as Darren Waller, a healthy Darren Waller will be. And the way that you're signing people and the way that you are approaching this upcoming season means that you better have people to throw the ball to because you're trying to win. Again, we talked a lot last time about my opinions on how the Giants are approaching everything. I don't need to rehash that. I think the bright side here is that they are remaining consistent with it.
Yes.
Whether or not that proves to be a good thing or a bad thing, who knows? But they're consistent.
Yep. And I also think for me, it being a tight end is a better option. They can always use the blocking help with the way the offensive line has had its ebbs and flows. So having any extra blocking help from a tight end is great. And also you have a clear-cut backup if Darren Waller isn't healthy. Daniel Bellinger did better than I think anybody expected him to do last year. So having him behind Darren Waller, I also think helps him grow a lot more because he had a lot of areas in the game that he needed to grow. So I just think trading that for that specific position was helpful. Again, like you said, because I don't think we were going to get very clear help from any wide receivers. Did you want to talk about his dad?
Yeah, Daniel Graham. No, Tim Graham, a reporter for, it looks like more the Bills, but regardless, he wrote something about Daniel Bellinger for The Athletic, and he did.
He basically just said Darren Waller was better than Daniel Bellinger. That was really what the article was.
And his father messaged him and was not happy about that. So he messaged him on Twitter and embarrassed him and his son by
not the best look for Daniel. His dad is very outspoken on Twitter. If you follow his dad on Twitter, very outspoken throughout all of what Daniel was doing last year. But to see it done in the DMs, and it's not like that's a lie. You know what I mean? Like, he's a sophomore in the NFL. To have Darren Waller be better than you, Darren Waller is better than 95% of the other tight ends when he's healthy. Like, it's not an outrageous claim to make. So to try and defend in the DMs like that is a little crazy.
Yeah, sorry. Now I'm just looking through his Twitter.
Yeah,
we can just move on.
Okay. Let's get into talking some of the free agency signings. How we're going to do it is by position, I believe. So let's pull up the sheet we had, and why don't we just go in the order we have here? So we can start with the AFC East. Why don't we start with the Buffalo Bills? Obviously, signing a backup, Kyle Allen, not really crazy there. Big news, Jordan Poyer decided to stay. He agreed to a 2-year deal with the Bills. He was one of their key free agents who they were going to be really sad to lose, and he ends up sticking around in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an awesome player, great safety. He's back with Micah Hyde. It's a 2-year deal. We don't know the money yet. I'm sure it's a decent amount of money. But yeah, they had to restructure both Josh Allen and Von Miller to free up the cap space, assuming to sign him along with a couple of their other key free agents, like Tyler Matakevich
is my guess.
Nope, that was a lot better than any of my guesses. As well as Deontay Hardy, a return man, and probably like a depth wide receiver, and Connor McGovern, a offensive guard.
Yep. And I think they're happy they signed an extension with Matt Milano. He made a difference for them last year. He signs a 2-year extension. He was under contract through 2024, and now he's there till 2026.
Yes. Yeah, that was another big one.
Yep. Inter-division, we'll move on to the Miami Dolphins. Former New York Jet legend Mike White is now a Miami Dolphin. He agreed to a 2-year deal with the Dolphins, where he is expected to back up Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, and I thought I saw the money somewhere. 2 years, $8 million. So it's decent money. He's going to be a high-paid backup, taking the role of Teddy Bridgewater last year, and that's obviously really important, specifically for that team because of all the issues that Tua has had with concussions. So,
and I think he rightfully earned that money. I mean,
absolutely.
He put on a show last year when he needed to, so I think he earned that money. Some other key ones, they decide to keep both running backs. They re-sign Raheem Mostert to a 2-year, $5.6 million deal, and Jeff Wilson to a 2-year, $6 million deal.
They also re-signed Myles Gaskin as well.
Oh, yes.
They re-signed all of their running backs. It was very odd.
Very odd, especially with the market for running backs in free agency this year was big names. Again, that comes with big money, but yeah, they run by committee there. So, I mean, I guess they just liked the way it looked last year and decided to keep it all.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Other ones, we know Mike Gesicki is a free agent. They did sign tight end Eric Sobair to a 1-year contract. And obviously the biggest of them all being the Jalen Ramsey trade.
Yeah. Like we said, I mean, they're going all in. They brought back a lot of their big names. And they were able to bring in Jalen Ramsey. They've obviously still got Tua. They've got Jalen Waddle. They've got the main pieces of their offense. Mike Gesicki is still a question mark. We'll see. I mean, they did just trade away Hunter Long, so that might speak well for the possibility of Mike Gesicki coming back, or maybe they look to address that in the draft. But either way, I don't think they're done yet. I agree with what you said earlier.
Yep. For the New England Patriots, they went a while without making a splash. Their big thing really was that they were able to keep cornerback Jonathan Jones, one of their many Joneses. They have a lot of Joneses on that team.
Yeah.
They resigned him to a 2-year, $20 million deal, $13 million guaranteed. That was the biggest splash they had made. Then they ended up to keep Jabril Peppers, safety, 2 years, $9 million, worth up to 11 with incentives. But the big one really came today for them, getting that wide receiver help. We'll talk about. They got rid of a wide receiver later, but they signed wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. He has a 3-year, $25.5 million deal with incentives, could be up to $33 million. He has $16 million guaranteed at signing.
Yeah, it was less money than Jacoby Myers.
Yes, and that sparked some. He publicly made that known on Twitter.
Who publicly made that known?
Like, it was on Twitter, and then Jacoby Myers had stuff to say about it.
Oh.
He tweeted something. It wasn't very overt, but it's, like, crazy, man. It's like what he said, something like that.
Cold world, LOL.
There we go. Something like, yep. So, clearly he was on it. The numbers were supposed to be, Jacoby Myers was going to get paid less, and they decided to go with Juju instead.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah.
Hold on.
What?
I'm reading something different.
Oh. It was the same. I thought it was like very similar numbers.
Well, so where I'm at right now has him at $25.5 million.
Mm-hmm. That's what Juju signed for.
Yeah, but Jacoby, like the Ian Rappaport's tweet had Juju signing a 3-year, $33 million, which would be the same as what.
That's Juju's fully with incentives and stuff. He can earn up to 33.
Oh, okay. With incentives. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's 25.5 with incentives can get up to 33 million. So 3-year 33
with there. I'm just an idiot. All right, we're good.
I think we're good here. We can move on to the New York Jets. We were talking about the Aaron Rodgers demands. I put that in quotes.
Oh. Something weird happened there. Yeah, okay. I don't know if you cut out or I cut out.
Okay, so I'll just repeat just in case.
Yep, go ahead.
So on to the New York Jets. The Aaron Rodgers demands, which for those listening without video, I put in air quotes. They signed former Packer wide receiver Allen Lazard a 4-year, $44 million contract for him. They re-signed kicker Greg Zuerlein and decided to keep Quincy Williams, who re-signed on a 3-year, $18 million deal. Gets up to 21 with incentives.
They also traded for Chuck Clark. They gave up a 7th-round pick. That was the trade I forgot. I knew there was at least one small one that I couldn't think of. Yeah. So, the big thing here is obviously the thing that hasn't actually been that hasn't actually happened yet, and that is Aaron Rodgers. We're going to see what the compensation is. I'm assuming Corey Davis is probably a goner after this. They can cut him and save a decent amount of money after signing Allen Lazard for 4 years, $44 million. But
also they couldn't reach a deal with Braxton Berrios, right? That was the other one who they let go.
They tried to restructure and
he didn't want to do that, so they cut him. He was another casualty there, but I think the Jets are still, obviously their big one, hopefully coming for them, is Aaron Rodgers. Let's move to the AFC North. This has been a little bit of a slower one. Anywhere in particular you want to start?
I mean, we can just start with the Ravens.
Okay.
Lamar Jackson got tagged, and Trayvon Mullen, their cornerback, is re-signing on a 1-year deal. And I believe that their backup quarterback was also tendered with a restricted free agent tag.
Yes, and I do believe they decided to keep Justice Hill.
Oh yeah.
I think this list is just a couple hours outdated, but I think they decided to keep Justice Hill.
Yeah, he signed a much bigger contract than I was expecting, considering he hasn't really been very involved.
Playmaker,
yeah, whatever. But yeah, Tyler Huntley, they gave a restricted free agent, RFA tender. Jesus, I cannot think right now. But yeah, so the lowest tender. So I believe that's the original round or first right of refusal. So he won't cost a lot of money for them.
Yep. The Bengals, the only one I have on this list. I don't know if there's anyone else. Signing Jermaine Pratt, re-signed to a 3-year, $21 million deal. He earns 10.35 in year 1 and 15.15 over the next 2. So he's a little bit, I guess, the numbers are spread out a little bit. I can't even say front-loaded or back-loaded, but it's an odd way to set up a contract.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting way.
Yeah, what happened, the biggest things that happened for them really were what they lost. They lost Jesse Bates, Hayden Hurst, and Von Bell. They lost both their starting safeties, both signed decent deals elsewhere. And then Hayden Hurst obviously also signed a decent contract with the Carolina Panthers. Samaje Perine went to Denver. They did a lot more losing than they did gaining, but I think they kind of saw that coming, considering they still have to pay T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. Joe Mixon somehow still hasn't gotten cut, which is a little bit shocking, but
you took the words out of my mouth. I was talking the other day about them because they're not going to have this big, flashy free agency with long contracts and big money. They have to do that all in-house with the amount of money they owe people. So they have a lot of cap space technically this year, but cannot really tie any of that up for the future if they plan on re-signing the people they already have on their roster. So I don't expect them to go super heavy in this year's free agency.
Absolutely.
Awesome. On to the next, the Cleveland Browns. Anyone here you want to talk about?
I mean, they re-signed their center, Ethan Pocic. I don't know how you pronounce it. Pocic. 3-year, $18 million deal. Their big signing was defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson to a 4-year, $57 million contract. He was one of the top names on the board outside of Javon Hargrave, the defensive tackle position. There were rumors that the Cleveland Browns were interested in Hargrave, who obviously signed for a lot more money with the Niners. So that's a big get for them on a defense that kind of needed that interior help with Myles Garrett on the outside. And then made some other signings with edge Obu Okoronkwa. I can't say things today. My brain is not working.
Last is Quo, so it's Okoronkwo.
Oh, Okoronkwo. Sure. Yeah, 3-year, $19 million deal. And Juan Thornhill at safety with a 3-year, $21 million deal. So they really did focus on the defense for the most part, at least when looking at guys coming to the outside. They still have a couple key free agents that they haven't taken care of themselves.
And they restructured Deshaun Watson.
Yes, they did, which was never – it's not too surprising.
No.
But, yeah, they've still got quite a few free agents, actually, that are, available to still be signed.
Yep. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, biggest, obviously, so far was cornerback Patrick Peterson signing a 2-year, $14 million deal. He has 5.85 guaranteed. I think it's a good number for him, but that was the biggest name in their free agency so far.
Yeah, I mean Nate Herbig, he's cheap, but he's a good
Mm-hmm.
he's a good offensive lineman. He comes from the Eagles. He's a, backup, but he's gotten a lot of starting reps at guard. He's a he's just a solid player. He'll be good for them. Larry Ogunjobi, that's pretty huge
Yes.
for them, bringing him back on a 3-year, $28 million deal. I think those are probably the biggest. They've
Yep.
still got some other guys that are still free agents or whatever, but
Yep.
yeah, as of right now.
The Houston Texans have actually made a lot of moves. Not surprising given their capital and terrible previous roster and everything else.
All said.
Quarterback Case Keenum signed to a $6.25 million contract, $4 million in guaranteed, 8.25 in incentives. Interesting whether they're obviously going to draft a quarterback, but interesting to have Case Keenum there nonetheless. Wide receivers Noah Brown and Robert Woods both going to the Texans. Noah Brown 1 year $2.6 million. Robert Woods on a 2-year $15.25. Noah Brown was with the Cowboys. I think it's a decent value for him. I think Robert Woods signing is a great signing for them. They clearly spent some time focusing on both sides of the ball. They also signed a 2-year deal with Andrew Beck and then go on to sign got Shaq Mason in the trade. They went on to do edge, defensive line, and secondary help with safeties. So they very spread out their money and in this free agency, which was very smart on them because they needed help all around. And I think they started to recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were smart enough to know that they did not have a lot of talent on their roster.
Yeah.
Sheldon Rankins, I think, is a pretty big signing. I think he's going to
Mm-hmm.
fit right in with the DeMeco Ryans defense. He obviously comes from the Jets, who ran a very similar scheme due to their head coach being the predecessor to DeMeco Ryans in San Francisco. I hope I followed that well enough.
I think so.
But yeah, so that's big. It has been a lot of, I don't think they haven't made that one big, like, splashy 8-year, $400 million signing. But honestly, I think this is the right way to approach it until you have some more long-term pieces in place that you get through the draft. I think this is the right way to, kind of piecemeal together a good enough team.
Yep. And I think I don't want to say settling for this, but you and I have had long conversations about the best way to build a team is building through the draft. Free agency helps, but building your team starts from building in the draft.
Yep.
And the Texans have that. And obviously, I think it's known that the Texans will probably take a quarterback in that second overall pick is what they have, right?
Yep.
Second.
Yep.
So I think it's until they have an idea of the direction this team is going to go, it's fruitless to sign somebody to an 8-year deal. And I also think it's a lot harder to sign someone to extensive deals with a team like the Houston Texans, which seems like it has no direction currently. So signing players to shorter deals works out for both the players and the organization.
Yeah. Moving on, another team that seemingly has no direction is the Indianapolis Colts. They have not done a ton because they don't have a ton of cap space, especially with the dead money they've now acquired with cutting Matt Ryan. They've got a decent amount of free agents that they probably will not be bringing back, whether due to affording or they're not wanting to come back. The biggest thing, I think the two biggest names that have kind of gone either way for the Colts have been losing Bobby Okereke to the Giants, but signing defensive end Samson Ebukam from San Francisco to a 3-year, $24 million deal. So yeah, a good depth signing there, but you also lost a really solid linebacker.
Yep. Kicker Matt Gay signed though, 4-year, $22.5 million.
I believe that was it might be the most total money ever given to a kicker or the most guaranteed in like a free agent deal.
It's the Colts, so
yeah, whatever.
Yeah, makes sense.
What are they doing?
Yeah. Jacksonville Jaguars obviously put the franchise tag on tight end Evan Ingram. They re-signed one of their backup quarterbacks, CJ Beathard, to a 2-year, $4.5 million contract. Re-signed with safety Andrew Wingard and acquired defensive lineman Roy Robertson Harris, 3-year, $30 million. So pretty decent money for him.
Yeah, they also lost right tackle Jawan Taylor, which is a pretty big loss. He signed a massive contract with Kansas City. It's great for him, great for Kansas City, but not so great for the Jaguars. So, yeah.
Well, so 3 out of 4 teams with no directions, because the Tennessee Titans also feel like another one that
I don't know what they're doing.
That anyone has any. I don't think anyone does. Fans, the front office, the players. I don't think anyone has any ideas on what this team is doing. Remember, this was a team that like tried to like go all in and then backed out a little bit, and then now it's like, what?
They traded
Where
AJ
are
Brown.
we?
Yeah, I remember. It's very. I don't get it. I don't know how to feel. They're not going to be good this year. There's no way.
No.
They did sign Aziz Al-Shahir, who's a solid linebacker. They extended their long snapper. They lost Robert Woods, obviously. They lost David Long to Miami. I guess the biggest name, well, they lost Nate Davis, their guard, to Chicago, who signed a pretty decent deal. But the biggest name they've signed is Andre Dillard, former first-round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles, who historically and very infamously compared playing right tackle when you're used to playing left tackle as writing with the other hand. So that's not good. Not exactly words of, no one felt good after he said that, and the rest of his career basically followed. Also, I don't think there could possibly be a weirder fit. I mean, knowing Andre Dillard from his time in Philly, he obviously lost the starting job to 7th-round rugby star Jordan Mailata. But the big thing is he came out of college not being much of a run blocker. He was a pass blocker. He came from a system that was like famous for how little they ran the ball, which is cool. But he was much more athletic. He wasn't really a big, stocky guy. He didn't really excel in like strength. That hasn't changed a ton, and now he goes to the team that likes to run the ball with Derrick Henry.
And literally has no other option.
And has no wide receivers outside of a first-round rookie that
was fine.
Yeah. So a really
also,
weird
to note
fit.
that the Tennessee Titans are still exploring the option of trading Derrick Henry.
Yeah, no one's going to want to trade for him.
No.
Not
unless I feel like I just have to put that there because of this confusion.
Yeah, it's just weird, man. I don't know what they're doing.
So winner of the division is by default is the Jacksonville
Jaguars.
No,
we can't assume that because there's still the Jaguars.
I'm saying in like this so far, by default, no one else really has any idea. I would say the Texans are doing well. But
they've won the offseason before. I refuse to. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. We do have to speed up a little bit, but AFC West, anywhere you want to go? Broncos
did a lot of stuff. They signed a lot of people to a lot of money.
Jarrett
Stidham's there. Offensive guard Ben Powers, 4-year, $52 million deal. Mike McGlinchey from San Francisco, 5-year, $87.5 million deal. I think that's been the biggest signing of free agency so far in terms of total money.
And his is $50 million guaranteed in there.
Yeah. Zach Allen, defensive lineman from the Cardinals, I believe, agreed to a 3-year, $45.75 million with 32.5 guaranteed. Another big signing. So it seems like they're going all in for the second year in a row. What could possibly go wrong? I don't know, man. Sean Payton's got this under control. Also, shout out former CFL star Alex Singleton, former Eagle great, re-signed to a 3-year, $18 million contract. So good for him.
Sean Payton will save this team. For sure.
Of course.
That's exactly what it is. Kansas City Chiefs not doing too much. Signing that's another big one, 4-year, $80 million deal, $60 million guaranteed for offensive tackle Jawan Taylor. Signing edge Charles
Omenihu,
there we go. And re-signing re-signing defensive end Tershawn Wharton. But for the division, I'll jump to the Chargers real quick. Decide to re-sign backup quarterback Easton Stick, keep offensive tackle Trey Pipkins, and picked up linebacker Eric Kendricks on a 2-year, $13.25 million deal.
Yeah,
but the big one in this division so far is the Las Vegas Raiders. We have not gotten to talk about it yet because it had not happened. The Las Vegas Raiders have their quarterback. It will be Jimmy Garoppolo, who signed a 3-year, $72.75 million deal. There's 24.25 in year 1 on that deal for him. And the Las Vegas Raiders are rolling with Jimmy G. How do you feel about that?
I don't know.
Feels kind of lateral.
Yeah, it's a different kind of lateral, but like, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably good because Josh McDaniel gets a guy that he knows he can work with. I think the comfort there in choosing your own guy is probably something you feel good about. The receiving core is going through a bit of a makeover, obviously losing Darren Waller. You've still got Devontae Adams. They signed Jacoby Myers, as we've said, to a 3-year, $33 million deal, which I still find very bizarre because you already have Hunter Renfrow. I don't get it.
There's rumors that he's gonna go.
Well, now I would assume. I think that's stupid. I don't know. I'm a big Hunter Renfrow fan. I don't really get the point of signing Jacoby Myers, especially to that big of a deal. I think he's fairly limited in terms of upside, but whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess. They also signed Marcus Epps. That was like one of their other biggest signings, which is kind of weird after the top two. Who's Eagles safety. Yeah, so.
And obviously, Josh Jacobs received the franchise tag. He had stuff to say about Darren Waller leaving. He was unhappy about that.
Yeah, Darren Waller's a really liked guy. So.
Yes, very much. Oh, and speaking, we got to talk about Darren Waller earlier, but I forgot to mention, I was reading old articles on Darren Waller and like his story, which for those of you who don't know, one of the most inspiring stories in the entirety of the NFL. Read up on it. But his dad is a Giants fan. And the craziest part of it, though, is he just got married.
Do you think his dad will fight Daniel Bellinger's dad? Sorry, go on.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Now I have to think about it. The most interesting part is he just got married to Kelsey Plume, who plays for the Las Vegas Aces, the WNBA team, and then they traded him.
Well, he was pissed, apparently. There was some weird stuff. He was like pissed at Josh McDaniels for like announcing.
Yes, there was like there was like drama surrounding the whole thing.
Yeah, very
Either
weird.
way, he's a New York Giant, and I'm sure his dad's happy. But Josh,
his dad is not happy. Daniel
Bellinger. But
he demands a trade.
I was more so pointing out Josh Jacobs and his constant need to comment on everything all of the time. Anyway,
he's
on to. We're going to save the NFC East like we always do.
Right.
NFC North, the Chicago Bears.
Oh my God, obviously. They did so much crap.
I know. Obviously, DJ Moore, the big one, acquired in the trade that they moved back to the 9th overall pick.
That's one of the big ones.
You want to point out here?
Edge to
Marcus
Walker,
David Montgomery.
3-year deal. They lost Dave Montgomery. I don't think they care all that much.
No.
They signed Travis Homer, who's more of a special teams guy anyway, but also a backup running back. They signed a fullback to an extension. Kari Blasingame. I think that was the guy that I mentioned last week. And I didn't know who he was. Tremaine Edwards was the other.
Name.
Yeah, it was a cool name. Blasingame. Awesome. Tremaine Edwards. And not Edwards. Tremaine Edmonds was a huge one, a 4-year, $72 million contract that includes $50 million guaranteed and linebacker TJ Edwards. So they redid their linebacker room, agreed to a 3-year, $19.5 million contract that includes $12 million guaranteed. Shout out to TJ Edwards, former undrafted free agent, just worked his way up to getting this big money deal, former Philadelphia Eagle. He actually grew up a Bears fan. He is returning home. There's a bunch of pictures.
I love stories like that.
Bunch of pictures floating around the internet of him tailgating at games wearing a Devin Hester jersey. So shout out to him. He got a homecoming. He was like one of the first free agents, if not the first free agent that signed after. Actually, it might have been. It was a really miserable beginning of free agency because I believe the first one was Javon Hargrave and the second one was TJ Edwards. So yeah, go Birds.
And answer division, we mentioned the Bears lose David Montgomery. He was picked up by the Detroit Lions. Is a little cycle of running backs going around because the Detroit Lions lose Jamal Williams, but Lions pick up running back David Montgomery. He signed a 3-year, $18 million deal. They go on to sign running back re-sign Craig Reynolds.
Shout out Craig Reynolds.
Woo.
He's a Philly. Well, he went to Kutztown, which is near me. He went to school with my friend. So anyway.
Yep. They did a lot of re-signing 2 defensive linemen, Isaiah Buggs and John Kaminsky. They re-sign defensive back Will Harris, and they decide to sign Cameron Sutton on a cornerback on a 3-year, $33 million deal with $21 million guaranteed.
Yeah, a good day for the Lions. I think for the most part pretty uneventful, but that's not always a bad thing. Like no huge deals. Speaking of that, the Green Bay Packers, all they did was sign their long snapper and their return man. So we're just going to move on. They haven't even traded Aaron Rodgers yet, so whatever. The Minnesota Vikings signed Nick Mullins, re-signed Nick Mullins to a 2-year deal to back up Kirk Cousins. Josh Oliver signed there to like a big contract, which came out of nowhere, is really weird because they just traded for TJ Hawkinson. I've given up on trying to understand what the heck the Vikings want to do. They did sign center Garrett Bradbury to a good 3-year deal, which is pretty big for them. Byron Murphy's cornerback went there on a 2-year, $22 million deal. Marcus Davenport from the Saints signed there on a 1-year, $13 million contract. And then they also signed a long snapper and they re-signed their kicker. So, yeah.
And I also think it's interesting to note that the current floating around of the Vikings is that they don't plan to extend Kirk Cousins after this year.
The current floating around.
It's exactly what it means. Anyway, they kind of are indicating they don't plan to re-sign him. So I just think that's interesting to note with all of the things they're doing this year. Anyway, also Garrett Bradbury, not Bradbury.
You're Bradbury. NFC South.
Okay.
Oh my God, the Falcons is so much crap. Why? Why did they do so much
Taylor
crap?
Heineke. Great. My favorite.
Taylor Heineke is he was signed to start 5 games and then sit behind whatever rookie they draft. Congrats, Taylor Heineke.
2-year deal up to $20 million.
I don't care about Jonnu Smith. I couldn't care less about Jonnu Smith. One thing I do like is they re-signed both their a tackle and a guard, Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry, to extensions. I think that's important when you're building a team. They re-signed Lorenzo Carter. They re-signed a lot of their guys, but they also signed some big free agents like defensive lineman David Onyemata. I got there.
That's such a good name.
Linebacker Caden Ellis. Jesse Bates was obviously a huge one for 4 years, $64 million, which has $23 million in year 1. So yeah, some pretty big signings. There's rumors that they might sign Darius Slay. If that happens, I will cry.
If he gets released.
If he gets released, he's technically still an Eagle, so whatever.
Yep. On to the Panthers, who picked up quarterback Andy Dalton, 2-year, $11 million deal. Obviously, Panthers plan to draft a quarterback, keeping Andy Dalton as backup mentor. I don't know. Tight end Hayden Hurst was a big name for them, 3-year, $21.75 million deal. They re-signed center Bradley Bozeman and agreed to a 3-year deal with defensive lineman Shai Tuttle. Also signed safety Von Bell. And the big one is running back Miles Sanders. We still don't have all of the news on him. It is within like the last hour or so that it was announced. Yeah. Miles Sanders, the rumor is it's 4 years, but there's no clear definition on that or on the money or how the contract is set up. So once we have that, I would like to talk about that a little bit more in depth, but that is where he's headed, at least.
Oh, the freaking Saints. Why did they do so much? They suck. They lost like a lot of players. Yeah. They also signed a decent amount of players.
Wait, what? They re-signed Jameis Winston?
Yeah. They
I thought he was going to be a cap casualty.
No. Well, he was, and then they re-signed him.
What?
Yeah, they re-signed him.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they
blink and you'll miss it.
They lost Shai Tuttle. They lost Andy Dalton, who went to Carolina as well. They lost Deontay Hardy. They lost Caden Ellis. They lost Marcus Davenport, but then they obviously signed Derek Carr to a new deal, as well as signing Jamal Williams to a 3-year, $12 million deal. And then they re-signed a couple of their other like bench guys, as well as not bench guys, but like depth guys. But then the big ones were probably Michael Thomas signing a new 1-year, $10 million contract with a max value of $15 million, as well as re-signing tight end Juwan Johnson to a 2-year, $12 million extension.
Love that one. I feel like Michael Thomas is a waste. I just want to backtrack real quick. Just came out from Tom Pelissero. Alexander Madison agrees to a 2-year deal to remain with the Vikings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Derek Carr, whatever. The big one for me is I really like the Juwan Johnson signing. 2-year, $12 million, like you said, 8.5 fully guaranteed. He's been really great in the red zone. And is just a really like personable guy. I like him as a whole. I follow his wife on TikTok. But I liked the way he played last year. I think it's really good for them to have him.
I miss Adam Troutman. I still believe.
I know. The fish man. Anyway, Buccaneers have their quarterback for the year, signing a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with Baker Mayfield. The crowd goes wild.
Whatever. They also re-signed Levante David, and they kept cornerback Jamel Dean in town. Oh, they're going to be very boring to watch this season. Kyle Trask v. Baker Mayfield, the story of the offseason. The Arizona Cardinals, running back Corey Clement re-signed on a 1-year contract. Didn't even realize that was a thing. He spent like the entire postseason run with the Eagles, just hanging out, being an Eagles fan, which is what he was before he was picked up by the Eagles and won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. Honest to God, I thought he was retiring because he was just hanging out with the Eagles the whole time. So whatever. I mean, good for Corey. Shout out Glassboro, New Jersey, I guess. They lost a lot of guys, a lot of big name free agents. Shoot. I missed that. They signed Kaiser White from the Eagles. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yes.
They didn't really make any big splashes, to be honest.
And neither did the Rams, who only have acquired Hunter Long in that trade with the Dolphins for Jalen Ramsey. That's all they got on their transaction sheets. Yeah. The Niners pick up Sam Darnold, agree to a 1-year deal, base value of $4.5 million deal.
It is wild. It's crazy. I can't believe that the dude who was the future MVP of the NFL is going to lose both the starting and the backup battle. And Brock Purdy will be the 3rd string quarterback going into the regular season.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I wonder if there's ghosts for Sam Darnold to see in San Francisco.
I hope not. I like Sam Darnold.
Very intrigued.
I hope he does well.
Defensive tackle Javon Hargrave signed a 4-year, $84 million deal. I think that's our most so far. That includes $40 million guaranteed, so almost half of his contract guaranteed. Spread out a little bit. They re-signed their center, Jake Brendel. They re-signed a safety. Nothing too crazy in the rest of it.
Yeah, they lost some of the. They lost Mike McGlinchey, which was really their biggest one. They basically more or less they said bye to Mike McGlinchey and said hi to Javon Hargrave. They said bye to Jimmy Garoppolo, and they lost a lot of other free agents. A couple to Houston, just as depth signings for D'Amico Ryans, which always happens with new head coaches.
Yeah. For the Seahawks, obviously biggest for them so far was re-signing Geno Smith. We've talked about that. They sign a 2-year deal, $10 million for defensive lineman Jerron Reed, and defensive lineman Draymond Jones signs a 3-year, $51 million contract.
Yeah, he comes over from Denver. It's just not a priority for Denver, apparently, even though they spend a lot of money elsewhere. But good signings for the Seahawks. Very solid signings, very unsplashy free agency, which is kind of what they're used to at this point. I feel like that's very normal of them.
Yep. Why don't we start? We're bumping back to the NFCs. We could start with the Cowboys. Obviously, plan on releasing Ezekiel Elliott and franchise tag Tony Pollard. They re-signed Leighton Vander Esch for a 2-year, $11 million contract. They did acquire Stephon Gilmore in the trade, obviously, and re-signed safety Donovan Wilson on a 3-year deal worth up to $24 million. So really only defense.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Donovan Wilson was a really solid signing. I think he's a good player. Stephon Gilmore, like I said, I think it's a good trade. I don't think it's like the crazy splash move that everyone else is making it out to be. But Leighton Vander Esch, again, solid deal. So nothing too crazy for the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. So
Washington Commanders sign quarterback Jacoby Brissett. I think there's numbers on that now, but I don't have them here. They sign offensive tackle Andrew Wiley, 3-year, $24 million contract. They do sign, which I'm so sad about, offensive lineman Nick Gates. He's the one who had that incredible comeback story after nearly, I don't want to exaggerate it. He had a really bad issue with his leg. It snapped in half and he needed multiple surgeries and crazy stuff. He had a comeback with the Giants last year. He's now with the Commanders, a 3-year, $16.5 million deal. They franchise tagged Deron Payne, and then he got paid $90 million.
Yeah, that was what drove the price up for Javon Hargrave, was that deal right there.
Yep. Any of these other ones you want to talk about? I mean, Cameron Dantzler's on here. He was claimed off waivers from the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, just some solid
little moves.
Yeah, little moves. David Mayo, Cody Barton, Danny Johnson, all solid defenders. So, yeah.
Yep. For the Giants, we've talked about Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. Jones got paid. Barkley got the tag. They re-signed Matt Breida. picked up Darren Waller in that trade, obviously. They re-signed Gerard Davis, linebacker, and agreed to terms with Bobby Okiri, 4-year Okereke, thank you. 4-year, $40 million contract for him. They re-signed the punter with the really, really good hair, Jamie Gillian, 2-year, $4 million. I like him. I love his hair. But big for me, wide receiver Sterling Shepard re-signed on a 1-year, $1.3 million deal. That's my favorite. He's one of my all-time favorite Giants. And when we got to go to the game and be on the field, seeing him up close and personal, even when he's not playing, he is like the heart and soul of that team. So being able to have him back here, even if it's just for a year, for little money, I am really, really happy about it.
They also cut Kenny Galladay.
They did. R.I.P.
Well, maybe. Yeah.
And your Eagles.
Yeah. Also did a lot of losing. Javon Hargrave left. Andre Dillard left. That's fine. T.J. Edwards left. Marcus Epps left. Kaiser White left. And we've still got C.J. G.J. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is also an impending, is a free agent. So right now we've lost a lot of free agents on the defensive side of the ball. Bright side is we signed back James Bradbury for a really solid contract, 3 years, $38 million, about 12 and a half per year. I don't know why you guys released him. It never made sense to me. Just restructure his contract.
Just let him go elsewhere. He doesn't have to be the Eagle.
I prefer this. I prefer it significantly. So really, really good signing there. Only 30 years old. Really good contract for that overall.
I think it was really competitive money. Sorry to interrupt. Competitive money for him. He had like a great stint with you guys at the end of the year, but I think the Eagles paid like a competitive salary to him. Yeah, but didn't have to overpay, which is always nice. Exactly.
Brandon Graham came back on a 1-year deal. If he plays most of the season, then he will be the all-time leader in Eagles games played, as well as the longest tenured Eagle in history in terms of seasons played. Just an all-time Eagle right there. I love him. He always makes my day. Fletcher Cox re-signing on a 1-year, $10 million contract.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that one in terms of that's a lot of money for someone that I'm not totally convinced still has it. But he will also move up to, I believe, second or third. Him, Jason Kelsey, and Brandon Graham, if they all play 17 games this season, will be 1, 2, and 3 in all-time games played as an Eagle, which is pretty freaking cool. Boston Scott, Giant Killer's back. That's the one you should be more upset about, Ashley. He will have 4 touchdowns this year. They will all be against the Giants.
Yeah.
And yeah, we signed Rashad Penny, which is pretty cool. Really, really, really solid running back when he's actually playing. I don't expect him to be healthy all the time, but if he's healthy, behind the best offensive line in football coming from the Seattle Seahawks, it could make a big difference, and he could be really effective because I think he's just a really, really, really good runner.
Yeah, and especially with losing Miles Sanders, I think having him there is crucial with the way the Eagles run their running backs in a committee by sort, very down specific backs and red zone backs. I think having him there will be crucial.
Yeah, and I think Rashad Penny is a better straight up runner than Miles Sanders. Already said that Kelsey is back. And then there's just the whole question mark surrounding the Darius Slay situation.
Yeah.
So a lot of really weird stuff going on for the Eagles. But they're making good moves in terms of opening up cap space for future years because they're planning for Jalen's contract. They obviously lead the league in dead money this year. But next year they don't. So that's good. It's been a very mixed bag where when I look at it from the point of view of this is the right move, and I think Howie's doing a good job with maybe the exception of the Fletcher Cox contract, although apparently he declined more money from multiple other teams, including the Jets, to come back and give the Eagles a hometown discount. We'll see if that's true or if it's worth it. But still hurts because a lot of really good players, a lot of players that I liked, a lot of homegrown talent guys like Marcus Epps and TJ Edwards that just slowly made their way into starting roles here. So yeah.
I know it's a lot of information that we went over today. Any big winners or losers so far in free agency for you?
I really like what the Bears have been doing. I think they're doing the right things in terms of building around Justin Fields. I think they're doing their best to build an offensive line. I know not everything has gone the way that they've hoped. I think they missed out on 1 or 2 guys that they were hoping to get. But I think they're building a solid defense. I think they're building, getting DJ Moore is huge. I think they got a great return for the first overall pick. And I just like that they're committing to Justin Fields because I think he's a really talented player. So They're probably my biggest winners. I really like what they're doing.
I agree with you on the Bears. I also surprisingly really like what the Texans are doing. While it's not as splashy and crazy, being able to see a team that seems like they have an effective plan for building for the future, but also being able to try and do their best this year is interesting. I think they're doing it the right way. You and I have focused a lot on the incredible hardships that go with rebuilding a team, and I just think the way they're going about this free agency and planning for the draft in their future has been interesting and like a breath of fresh air to see.
Agreed.
Awesome. Really quickly, Duncan, where can we find you?
Just sitting on Darius Slay's Twitter, waiting for him to give me more information.
Put on notifications.
I might at this point. Like I'm getting more news from his Twitter than I am Adam Schefter, apparently. So yeah, that's basically all I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be ignoring everything else in my life until this Darius Slay situation is figured out. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at mpduncan75 or here on Wednesday nights.
Yep. You can find me on Twitter at Ashley_Marie, 2 A's at the beginning of Ashley. You can find me, Duncan, and all the Undroppables crew by becoming a patron at patreon.com/theundroppables. What?
Miles Sanders' deal with the Panthers is for $25 million over 4 years, apparently.
Wow.
Interesting.
So what? A little over $5 million a year?
Yeah, that's not bad. I'm more interested in
how it's structured.
The guaranteed, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm intrigued to see. So anyway, sorry, continue outroing.
It's okay. You can find us all by becoming a patron at patreon.com/theundroppables. I hope you all have a fun March Madness, a fun rest of free agency. We look forward to seeing you here next Wednesday. And I hope you like what your team is doing in free agency. I hope you all have a good night.
Go Birds.
Bye.